Hello, welcome, please come in. It is time to resume our thief-only runs in this, the final game in the series, Final Fantasy XII. And this game is interesting because it combines the thief and ninja into a single class, the Shikari, a class devoted to being fast, using daggers, and occasionally other weapons, though not as much as I'd like. We'll get to it. We've been in a bit of a no spellcasting run for a while in FF12, with many of the last few runs either having no spellcasting access or basically no spellcasting access. And that will continue here. While Shikari can technically learn Shelga and Protectka, those are both functionally post-game spells, so they will not be relevant here. We join back up with Vaughn in the sewers to kill some rats and head out into the Ester Sand to hunt down a tomato. All very normal, all very easy. Then it's south to the Giza Plains to team up with Penelo to get a Sunstone. One slight change from prior runs is that I have not yet assigned license grids to anyone, because I will be waiting to do that until after the Gambit tutorial in the Giruvegan waterways, so I don't have to repeat this early section every time. Mostly because your license grid choice isn't super relevant this early, and I have received many comments asking why I didn't already do that, since the early sections are very easy, and there are two main reasons. The first is that this opening section, while a bit dull, is a great opportunity to exposit on the class, the challenge, and anything else I want to ramble on about. The other reason is that I am stupid, and keep forgetting to make a save after the Gambit tutorial before doing other things. But not this time, because we are past the party, into the waterways, mashed through the tutorial, and I have created a separate save down the list that I can now use for the 4 remaining class runs. Huh. I guess there are only 4 more of these to go. I'll need to think of what challenges to do in FF12 after that. Anyway, now that the temporary party is assembled, it's time to battle through the Giruvegan waterways. I won't have access to a shop for a bit, so my characters are in their default equipment rather than anything thief-specific, so this section is also pretty standard. The first boss is a bunch of slimes. These are very easy because Fran starts with the fire spell, which deals big damage that they are weak to. That done, I'm going to grind out a handful of dark motes from this treasure chest for later. Don't even worry about it. We'll get to it. And then it's time for the next boss fight against Firemane. This boss is never too bad, but the reliance on limited cure magic and even more limited potions is not super great. My damage is also a bit disappointing, but give it a minute or so and that is another boss down. The party has been captured and thrown into Nabana prison, so it's time for a fist fight, which I win, because it's easy. That gets me my equipment back and it's into the prison proper to... oh dear, oh gosh, that's not good. Okay, well let's just add that to the list of embarrassing early deaths, shall we? Let's try that again, but this time not aggro so many dudes, shall we? That gets me safely into the Barheim passage, which opens up the first proper shop post-party assemblage, which means it's time to grab daggers and armor. Interestingly, thieves in this game can also equip shields, so... wait, thieves don't get shields 1? I can't equip the most basic shield? This game is so weird sometimes. I guess I'll have to wait until later to actually equip shields in my offhand, but everyone has up-to-date equipment, so let's head through the passage. Okay, the dagger damage is not good, but not terrible. It should be noted that daggers are also faster than other weapons, so that can help offset the low damage a bit. Still not great though. Alright, next boss fight time. The Mimic Queen, which is pretty easy, as normal. Just take out the small mimics so they don't leech too much electricity and beat down the Mimic Queen. It doesn't even really do that much damage. Alright then, time to run back to Rabanastre, recruit Bosch properly, and join back up with Fran and Balthier. Dagger damage scales based on strength and speed, so my party is going to be just the boas this time. Bosch, Balthier, and Vaughn, and it's time to fly over to Bujerba for the next stage of the story, which means Lamont joins the party to help in the mines. The shops don't have any new daggers, which is a bummer, but they do sell new armor and some shields that I can actually equip. Hooray! The joy of actually having equipment. Into the Lusu mines, and that damage is really not great. Daggers just don't do as much damage as I'd really prefer. Good thing is Lamont deals reasonable damage and has Cura for healing, because I don't really have that many consumables. Enemies die quickly here though, so it's not too bad, and right near the end I can reset the map a few times to grab a free Assassin's Dagger. Probably not worth grabbing more than one, but it is a pretty decent damage upgrade. And then it is time to run away from Bagamnon and co. Actually, it's been a while since I had to fight these jerks. How difficult is this fight? Yeah, no. Back in Bujerba, it's time to do a shouting minigame. We love shouting minigames. This gets me a meeting with the Marquis and a trip into the Leviathan. In retrospect, I probably should have waited and bought more healing items. Vossler is good, but he can't actually heal me at all, and that lack of healing is palpable. And why are the potion lures so far away from the starting grid? Definitely need to grab these reflect emotes, these should be very useful, but most of the other treasure chests in this area are not that exciting. And that brings me to the next boss fight, Room Full of Dudes, which might actually be a bit rough. My damage isn't nearly as high as I'd like, and my healing is worse. Good news is I do have an Erogue emote to start the fight and deal pretty decent damage. Okay, that ended up not being that difficult. Love that for me. Into the prison, where I finally have a shop that sells things, most notably assassin's daggers and better armor. One nice thing about Thieves is that they get a decent number of bonus HP lures, and for some reason most of them are right next to the starting space, meaning getting high HP early is actually quite doable. I mean, I don't have the healing access to really capitalize on that, but, you know, it's still a benefit. And, much as I'd love to fight an infinite number of dudes on the way out, I simply do not have the HP for that. So, time to turn off the alarm and book it for the exit. So it's time for the next boss, Judge Geese. Item 1 is throwing out an arrow mode to help take out the goons, then a reflect emote on the party so Geese's arrow spells bounce back and take him out very quickly. And then it's everyone's favorite part of the game, the Sand Seas of the Ogier and Yensa variety. Both areas are very long and very samey. Vossler does rejoin the party near the beginning to give me a very helpful damage buff. There are also a lot of treasures, none of which are really worth grabbing except the golden amulet here. I also skipped the quest for the Esker berries as per normal. I get questions about the Esker berries, or advise to grab them for the Garuda fight, but the real reason I never bothered doing that is that none of the dialogue in that quest is skippable, so completing it actually takes a decent chunk of time. And while the Garuda fight can sometimes be tricky, it actually just takes less time to not do the quest. So it is a bit of an open question when I will actually need to do that quest because my party is simply too ill-equipped to fight the boss, but don't worry, it will not be this time. Ooh, you sell high potions? These should be very useful in the next boss fight. Now, important note is that Garuda is flying, so none of my characters can actually hit it. Vossler does have telekinesis though, and pretty decent physical attack. Bosch and Balthier are dedicated to healing duty, while Vaughn helps out in the fight by throwing out my most damaging motes. These will not be useful later in the game as my magic stat continues to fall behind the curve, but here, they're still pretty useful. And between motes and telekinesis, the fight is over and Garuda is dead. Which is bad news for the Eskerberry fans. If Thieves don't need them, I don't think anyone will. So, with Garuda dead, it's time to hop into Wraithwall's tomb, and I must immediately deal with my next boss, Demon Wall. As soon as I cure Blind on all my characters, Demon Wall loves to use status effects, but other than Blind, none of them are super impactful. And while I do lose Balthier to an X-Zone, he's not actually my best damage dealer, so that's fine. The rest of Wraithwall's tomb is just running around, grabbing random treasures, and killing enemies. There aren't really any interesting items to actually pick up, so it's into the next boss fight against Belias. And Belias can be fairly difficult with big hits and strong magic attacks. That is not actually what happens here though. Other than burning a Kira mode after Firaja, the fight is completely unnotable. Seriously, I thought my damage was a bit low, but the sheer speed of my attacks really chewed through the boss, which is nice, and I appreciate it. But beating Belias gets me brought back into the Leviathan, and it's time for the often more difficult Vossler fight. First up, throw out an arrow mode to help take out the minions, then throw out Kira modes because I won't want them later anyway. Vossler's combo rate increases a lot in the final phases of the fight, but Balthier and Vaughn can combine high potions to keep Bosch alive to finish it. Wow, that might actually be the best Vossler fight I've ever had. It's definitely up there. I'll take it though. Time to head south to the Giza Plains Wet, where my main objective is to knock down a bunch of old trees to clear a path to a hidden area, because there are treasure chests here that are very valuable. Not to use, but the contents can be sold for pretty good money. Oh wait, there is a good dagger in one of these, never mind. This is even more valuable than I thought. And I can finally get Balthier some potion lures. I think he's going to end up serving as my main healer, since both Bosch and Vaughn will deal more damage with dagger attacks. Those gathered, and it's through the Osmond Plains to reach Jahara, and the first thing I want is the Pheasant Natsuke to give a 50% bonus to healing items. Then chat with the Elder to recruit Larsa back to the party. There isn't really any point to buying items here, so it's time to move on. And I reach Irut village. The Gulmore jungle won't let us go the way we want, so in order to go that way anyway, we're going to need to rescue Fran's sister. But first, time to buy some new armor, which is always nice. I should also make sure to get Vaughn the remedy lures ASAP. Shikari get all three, and that means full status healing. To that end, I borrow a chocobo and ride it over to the Hen Mines. Larsa being back in the party means I have some decent healing available, even more so now that Balthier has some potion lures and the Natsuke. It's still not as good as just having curative magic, but it'll have to do. The Hen Mines themselves don't have anything interesting to grab or enemies to face, so it's mostly just a casual run through the area to the next boss, Tiamat. A big dragon. And this boss is never really difficult, but it is often tedious. The boss is pretty durable and my damage is not especially great. It also loves to use Disablega, so I have to try and keep my characters away from each other so I don't run into an issue with multiple characters getting disabled at the same time. However, it doesn't actually deal that much damage, and between Larsa's Cura, Balthier's high potions, and my increasingly bloated HP pools, I'm never in any real danger. So, that is Fran's sister rescued, so it's back to Arut village to get the boon and through the forest to face the Elder Worm. And much like Tiamat, this fight is kind of obnoxious. My attacks are dealing tiny amounts of damage, and while this boss can't disable my party, it can use Sporefall. I am more equipped than many classes are, thanks to those remedy lores, but that just means the fight is easy, not that it is quick. I mean, it's not terribly slow either. FF12 tends to have fairly quick fights, particularly compared to some other games. But where there aren't any interesting decisions to make, you kinda just sit there. Anywho, that gets me through the Golmore jungle. I can then head through the Paramena Rift and reach Mount Bur-Omisace. Heading to the main building, and I chat with the Grand Kiltius, and Larsa is out of the party. Big sad. I will miss someone in my party having access to Cura. But we power through, mostly because the shop sells new weapons, new armor, and new shields, all of which go a long way to make sure my characters can stand up to upcoming fights. Oh, I should also stock up on more high potions. My biggest pain point in a lot of these runs is just affording consumables. Southward I go, fleeing from flying enemies at several points because I can't hit them, and it's on to the Still Shrine of Miriam. Okay, so the first issue is my damage is bad, even with the upgraded daggers. I'm still behind where I'd really want to be. And while my healing has improved, it is still limited to single targets. That wasn't as important when I had big damage like Foebreaker or Ulan, but it kind of is here. Oh well, hopefully I can keep ahead of that. So, unlock the second section of the Still Shrine, and it's time to gather some funds. This area, with only undead that spawn, is very good for building up a chain, and therefore good at getting lots and lots of money. There's also a few chests that can have very sellable items in them. So hold please while I do a lot of grinding to get a lot of money. I could wait, but getting it now is more convenient and will help me afford consumables to make the next few areas a lot easier. Alright, money acquired, let's run a quick errand. A typical errand, which starts with a luxury airship ride to Nalbina. Here, I can buy teleport stones, so I don't have to worry about those anymore. Then, I can rent a chocobo to scare away some guards. And yes, those of you familiar will know that I'm doing all of this for the Berserker Bracer. Free auto berserk on one unit to double ATB speed and give a 50% damage boost to basic attacks. It is a necessity on physical attackers, and it is essential here. I don't actually have enough LP to grab the license for the Bracer, but that is very easily solved by even more slaughtering of the undead. Give me your sweet sweet loot and your LP. Okay, all the LP and gold I need, at least for now, so it's time to move on. Bosch is looking his classic red and darker shade of red, so it's time for the next boss, Venuskar. A boss that routinely loses out in difficulty competitions with Roomful of Dudes, so as you might expect, this boss is not a long fight. I'll be curious if this sentence is longer than the fight. Probably not. He has a cutscene attack. Without that, it could end up being kinda close. Anyway, that's all done, and the Still Shrine has been wrapped up, other than the real boss, Marius. Time to switch my entire party to ice shields for that ice defense, and Gladiuses are elemental weapons. These are immune to all elements. I don't actually think I can salvage this. Okay, let me just reset, bail, buy some weaker but non-elemental daggers, and come back, shall we? Might as well buy all the new armor and shields that became available while I'm here, so at least it doesn't feel like a complete waste of a trip. And we're back into the fight. And this fight is not difficult. My entire party is resistant to ice damage. Bosch and co are dealing very big chunks of damage, and my health, thanks to the conveniently placed HP Plus licenses, is really high. Like, maybe too high. I won't get X potions for a bit, and I am well into X potion HP. Oh well, it should be fine. Back to Mount Bur-Omisace, and it's time for another boss. And it's another human enemy who goes crazy at low HP. First task is to take out the minions, easy enough to do thanks to fast attacks and berserk. Then dispel Bergen's buffs, and start cutting away. He does take out Bosch thanks to his aggressive combos, but daggers can also combo pretty well. Okay, that is another potentially difficult boss down. And with that boss down, my next destination is Arcades. I can warp over to the Mosforan High Waste, because I already grabbed that crystal when I rode by to grab the Berserker Bracers, run through the High Waste and into the Salika Wood, collect some Moogles to open a big door, and it's into the Fawn Coast. The camp here has some improved daggers and armor, and the daggers are non-elemental, which is a big hooray from me. And remedies in the shop mean that statuses are now considerably less dangerous. Really any class that gets all three remedy lures goes crazy in this game. Status healing forever. I do need to really stock up on healing items though, because I don't have X potions yet, and the potion lords and Natsuke are barely holding on. Okay, over to the Sita Uplands to grab the key to the Cave Palace and the hunt to kill a bunch of tomatoes. Into the Cave Palace, and it's time for the next boss fight against the Tomato family. This fight is always a question of what status healing you have. If you have Asuna or maxed out remedies, you're good. Otherwise, this fight is going to suck. And thankfully, Shikari are the former, so I can basically just run around single targeting them as they go down. Really, that status healing makes all the difference in this fight. Wait, why do I have 99 remedies still? Did I not use a single remedy in this fight? What were the tomatoes even doing? Anyway, into the next area of the cave, and it's time for a weird mini-quest secret thing. So, in addition to daggers, Shikari can also equip ninja swords. These are less accessible than daggers, you won't find them in shops, but they are pretty strong and fast. One downside is they locked all the ninja sword licenses behind quickening licenses, so you actually can't get all of them on one character. It is impossible. But that's okay, the last license unlocks ninja swords that are all functionally post-game. By running around in a seemingly random circle, I can unlock the path to grab the first ninja sword in the game. No, do not double check me on that, there certainly was not one in the Still Shrine that I sold because I wasn't paying attention. Put Google down. Oh, there's also a Mega Elixir back here. I should probably be grabbing this in future runs. Mega Elixirs are difficult to come by. Anyway, with Ninja Sword in hand, it's time for the next boss, Ahriman. Another fight that's pretty easy. My HP totals are quite high, and Doom is a lot less frightening when you can actually cure it. The Ahriman's duplicate creation isn't even actually scary when Bosch is dealing that much damage that quickly. And that means I have reached Lower Arcades, which means it's Arcades proper time. My next destination is the Draclor Laboratory, but first it's time to do some shopping. Which means new daggers for everyone, other than Bosch, new armor for everyone, and the item shop sells X potions, so hopefully my healing is solved forever. Okay, no more stalling, time for Draclor. And yeah, nothing too exciting here. The random enemies here can actually be fairly dangerous if you get too many attacking you at once, but that mostly didn't happen. I mean, it didn't not happen and give me a game over, but sometimes your murder eyes are bigger than your murder stomach, and the next run through the area went way better. Right before the boss, I can pick up Gil Toss from this chest, more on that later, and it's time for the next boss against Dr. Sid and some rooks. I need to remove the Berserker Bracers from Bosch for the first phase of the fight to actually target the rooks while Sid is invincible. Actually, I think the Berserker Bracers are still better. 50% damage buff, double ATB speed, between 20 to 50% chance to target Sid, who is immune. Yeah, Berserk is just better than not in this fight. Interesting. Oh, anyway, Sid is dead because this fight is super easy. That gets me to Balfenheim, which probably has new equipment, but I have no money, so I'm just going to move on, which means warping to Arud Village. It's back into the Gulmar jungle, and through that to the Feywood, because this is the best money grinding spot in the game. But first, I should actually just fight this boss. Rafflesia has a field effect that drains MP over time, which is fine, I do not have any MP using attacks. My damage isn't quite as good as other runs, and the Rafflesia does manage to summon some Mulberries for extra help, but it doesn't super matter because they and the Rafflesia die soon after. And that means it's money grinding time. Hello, Mirror Knights, I require all your items. Okay, all that grinding done, and it's time to do a quick run back to Balfenheim via Mount Bur-Omisace, and it is shopping time. I never actually equipped the armor I bought in Arcades. Sometimes I have regrets that the dumb things I do get recorded, because it really makes me look incompetent more than I'd like. Well, gonna buy the new armor and weapons that are available, and actually the dagger is better than the ninja sword I had. Where is the next ninja sword? No. Okay, so they all suck to get, so it's actually just going to be daggers for the rest of the game. That is very FF12. I can also stock up on 99 X potions, though. Oh, and I think it's about time to do some trial mode for a huge influx of LP to buy some of the licenses I really want to have. Oh right, I don't really have any ranged options. This is a bit of a problem. Guess I need to get Moat creative? Plenty of new LP to get a lot of licenses. Hooray! Okay, back into the Feywood, and it's time to get through the second half of the area, and it's not too bad. I do want to grab the golden amulet here. I should have grabbed this before trial mode, huh? I'm stupid. Anyway, that gets me pretty uneventfully to the next major dungeon, Giruvegan. But before I actually go through Giruvegan, I have a couple errands I want to run to make sure my party is prepared for it. First on the docket is to do some hunting. Most of the hunts that would give me actually decent rewards are way too late in the game for me to want to bother with, and be completely unnecessary. However, the Encalados hunt specifically is very nice to do because it gives me a third golden amulet, which means doubling the LP growth through the trial mode sessions. And while I do have a lot of the license board unlocked, I would like to get all of the licenses unlocked that I actually could ever want. Encalados fight completed, I can head back to the Salika Wood because it is time to push into the Nabrius Deadlands. But that means killing King Bomb and its annoying Renew ability. There are a number of ways to beat this fight, and I have elected to go with the wait until you're just strong enough to kill it option, which works. I am strong enough to do okay in the Necro Hull of Nabudis. The enemies here are very dangerous, but my levels and equipment can mostly manage it if I am careful. That gets me the Hermes Sandals for auto haste, which, when combined with Bacchus Cider to inflict Berserk, and the Domain Calvados to bestow Bravery, means my offensive setup is now complete, and I am very equipped to charge into the endgame. Let's do some quick LP farming for license grid unlocks first, though. And all that done, and it's back to Giruvegan to fight the first boss, Daedalus. And yeah, those considerable damage buffs really show themselves off in the first half of the fight. Daedalus does get a huge damage boost in Phase 2, and even takes out Balthier, but it's just not enough to get through the rest of the party, particularly when Vaughn has a bubble built for double HP. Run through the puzzle mazes, throwing switches and beating up enemies. My biggest concern here is really resource management. I have a finite supply of healing, since no magic, and it's really important that my potions last the entire time, which means Balthier is really here to just throw out high and X potions. Okay, next boss time, Tyrant. My damage is okay, but not great, even with the huge damage bonuses Bosch is working with. And oh dear, that was a lot of party members dead very quickly. B-team, get in here, revive A-squad please. Okay, that was closer than I'd really expected, but that is fine. Into the Great Crystal, and there are some nice new armor pieces I can pick up. I think I'll give these to Bosch for the extra durability on my main attacker. I could give them to Balthier since he's my healer, but I'll go Bosch. The difference is pretty slight, so I'm not sure it actually makes much of a difference. And it's time for the final boss of the area, Shemhazai. She is not generally a difficult fight, but she can deal really big damage really quickly with Flare. It doesn't matter though, because she only gets off one flare and decides to target Vaughn, who has over 9,000 HP. Not your best tactical move, but to be fair, it probably didn't matter. Completing that section gets me back to Balfenheim, where Redis joins the party as a guest for the final true dungeon of the game. The shops don't have any new weapons, but they do have new armor, including armor better than what I picked up in the Great Crystal, so it didn't actually matter who I gave those to. And now it's time for some more airship rides, mostly because I can finally buy Dispel motes, which are both incredibly useful and surprisingly cheap. There will be no buffs in the world left when I am done, except those on Bosch, I guess. Those can stay. But there's no point putting it off, it's time for an endgame boss rush, which means flying over to the Ridorana Cataract. Beating up some fairly easy enemies in the first fight is against Hydro, which loves to deal big damage, inflict disease, and is weak to Holy. I don't really have any good Holy damage, but Bosch's damage output is good enough, especially coupled with remedies for that all-status healing. I just love having all three remedy lores, it's so good. So much better than it really has any right to be. Into the Pharos proper, and it's time to gather some orbs to activate statues. My damage here actually feels kind of low. I don't think it actually is, I think I'm just thinking about my last run through with Holy Lances in my Ulan playthrough, so everything is taking just a bit longer than I'd want to or expect, but it's probably fine. Anyway, back to the game, and it's time for the next fight against Pandemonium, which is an easy fight as always until I get to the halfway mark and the boss decides, nuh-uh, and I kind of just have to sit and wait for it to be vulnerable to damage again. And then the fight ends because it's not actually difficult. Okay, before I continue up the Pharos, I'm going to pop back to Balfenheim to restock a bit. I didn't actually use that many potions, but I know from past experience a small restock can be pretty important. Particularly when backtracking later is super tedious. Ooh, Demon Shield, nice. More running, more fighting, more trying to conserve potions, and it's next boss time, Slight, who is not particularly durable but is very damaging, and only becomes more damaging as the fight progresses. Good news is I have a ton of Phoenix Downs, and Redis has a Rise for full revives, which is absolutely needed to yo-yo my party members long enough to take down the boss. Okay, no slowing down, next area has more enemies that are even stronger, and I am not actually getting any more damage. But that's okay, we just have to power through, which is manageable, and getting through the next area means it's time for the next boss, Fenrir. This boss is really only scary because it can buff itself, and having functionally infinite Dispel motes means that it is not particularly frightening. Honestly, my biggest concern is just my X potion stocks. I only have 50-ish left, which sounds like a lot, but the hardest fights are yet to come, and I still have a few areas to get through. That is Fenrir down. Next, it is Ashmal. His damage can be drastically mitigated by throwing out a float mote immediately. He also loves to inflict disease on the party, but that is solved via remedy lores, and of course dispelling his buffs makes the fight a lot more manageable. It's certainly not a free fight, but it's pretty easy when you're prepared for it. Okay, only 2 fights left, and only one of them is a real fight. I have a little over 40 X potions, and that should be more than enough to get me through. First up is the Gabranth fight, which takes slightly longer than normal, but is still a real nothing of a fight. Sorry bud, at least you will be stronger next time. And then it's into the Sid fight. Phase 1 is a joke, but then we get Famfrit summoned in, which means no Berserk for Bosch. Once that expires, that is, so I can actually target Famfrit instead of the damage-immune Sid. Sid loves to buff Famfrit during this time, so I need to be throwing out spell motes pretty frequently. And that is Famfrit down, so all that's left is Sid, who needed an Esper to hope to stand against the party, which tells you all you need to know about how difficult the rest of the fight is going to be, which is to say it's not. Completing that section means Redis is out of the party, and only one story beat left, the Bahamut. Alright, no more messing around, it's time for the final fights. Let's get this game ended. I'm not actually sure how this is going to go. My party is a bit under-leveled compared to where I would normally be, or want to be at this point. But you know what, Shikari have not been messing around. Let's do this. And that starts with the actually scary Gabranth fight. Getting him to phase 2 is easy as ever, but once I get him back to low HP, I can use my secret weapon for the endgame, Guild Toss. This deals damage equal to the party's total HP divided by the number of targets and maxes out at 10,000. Which does get reduced to 7,000 in the final stages of the fight, but that is more than enough to end this battle before it becomes a problem. It does cost me money to use Guild Toss, but I brought more than enough money for the final fights. Next up is the first Vayne fight, which is very easy. This fight is never difficult, and my damage is good enough that Vayne spends more time in cutscenes than actually fighting me. So, next up is Swole Vayne and his many swords. Vaughn may not have a Nitsuke, but I do need to help Balthier with the healing portion, so it's time for another X potion gambit. The swords themselves are easy enough to take out with attacks, mostly because Bosch is dealing big damage very quickly. And after watching some more big attack cutscenes, God, I wish these were skippable. Oh, Balthier is dead. Okay, so I'm going into the Undying fight, and the party is at pretty low HP. Good news is that I can throw out a Dispel Mote and a few X potions to get the party back up to speed right at the start. And it's time for Vaughn and Balthier to just stop attacking at all. They don't deal that much damage, and having an attack queued or in progress will just delay the very necessary healing. There's the Magic Paling, which does stop Dispel Motes, which isn't ideal, but it means I'm making progress. Okay, there's the Physical Paling, time to dispel those buffs and just sort of wait until Bosch is actually dealing damage again. Isn't this fun? Okay, he's vulnerable again, which means Bosch can start hitting for big damage, and I am going to start using Guild Toss to deal big damage as well. And queue up a little Mega Elixir, since I actually have 2 this time to fully heal right after Terror Flare. And once the final set of Palings drop, I can attack and throw money to end the fight. And that was Final Fantasy XII, beaten with only Shikari. And that run was about what I was expecting. Shikari are weirdly durable in this game compared to Thieves in prior games, thanks to shield access and high HP totals from light armor and licenses. And I would have loved to use ninja swords if they weren't so far out of the way. But I will have more to say about that in the summary video, out next week. I did also want to shout out that I do have a Patreon, linked in the description. I spend a lot of time making these videos, so if you enjoyed the video, want to support the channel, and are financially stable enough to do so, that exists. No pressure though, this channel is free to enjoy for everyone, and will remain that way. For now, if you liked this video, be sure to hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of this, feel free to subscribe. Hey, maybe leave a comment if you have something you'd like to say. But whatever you decide to do, have a safe trip home.